Today on Real Slashers, we're taking a look at the summer camp movie with an ending you'll never forget, with 1983's Sleep. Actually, take it from here, trailer guy.
Sleepaway Camp. You won't be coming home.
Look what I did. I packed you and your cousin some goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me?
Sleepaway Camp is pretty much the prototype for how a summer camp slasher should be. Sure, Friday the 13th came before it, but this one actually has a functioning summer camp at its center. So if anything really deserves the title of camp slasher, it's this one. The movie opens up on a dedication to the film's mother, who was apparently a doer? Whatever that means. And it turns out the director Robert Hiltzik was only able to make the film due to an inheritance from said mother. And the only films he's ever been involved with are solely in this franchise. It's all starting to make sense. We first get this absolutely batshit insane water skiing segment. There's a lot going on here. When the water skier's boat hits and kills the father and one of the children, it's one of the more shocking aspects of a pretty damn shocking movie. I want to thank you guys for watching Real Slashers and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. As dumb as things can get here, the big moments really hit hard. Eventually, we get to see the camp a few years later as Angela and her cousin Ricky set off for adventures at the same establishment. Angela is the surviving child of the boat accident. Remember that, because it's pretty damn important later. Once at the camp, Angela struggles and gets relentlessly bullied. But the people at the camp start getting offed, starting with this super creepy pedo cook. He has one of the more disturbing deaths, with even his skin bubbling up. But to say he deserved it is a bit of an understatement.
Where I come from, we call them baldies. Makes your mouth water, don't it?
The rest of the movie follows this similar format. Someone does something to hurt Angela, and then they're offed in a brutal way. I think one of the most disturbing scenes in this whole movie is when this counselor comes back to camp and sees the massacred bodies of all the boys he was supposed to be looking after. There's not a lot of good acting in this movie, but goddamn does this guy just nail it here. And it's not like he was off being neglectful. He was taking one of the other boys back to camp because he was scared. He was being a good counselor. Just makes the tragedy hit even harder. And then by the time the ending happens, you just don't even know what to expect. We'll get into that in slicing up a scene, so, well, yeah, let's just get to it.
Angela. Such a lovely name. Why, I believe it means angel. Why, yes, I'm sure it does. I know you're going to like that name, won't you, Peter?
If there was ever a scene that was so pivotal for us to slice up, it would be the ending to Sleepaway Camp. After loads of bodies keep popping up, the counselors go looking for missing campers, as well as the killer. They find Ricky's body, but he's still alive, just unconscious after a rather irate Mel beats him half to death. Guess he really wanted to get with Meg. In the midst of all this chaos, Paul is completely oblivious and wants to go skinny dipping with Angela. Talk about priorities. As Ronnie and Susie arrive on the lakeshore, they see Angela sitting with Paul laying on her lap. She's stroking his hair tenderly. It almost feels like a sweet moment. That's when the batshit insane flashback starts and this movie gets ramped up to 11.
I just hope that Richard doesn't get jealous that I didn't get him anything. Oh, but then he is such a dear. I'm sure that he won't mind.
Angela's crazy aunt gives such an insane performance that it just makes the exposition feel even more like a fever dream than it already is. See, Aunt Martha reveals that it was actually Angela that died in the boating accident, and that Peter was the one that survived. But she already had a boy in Ricky, so she couldn't possibly have two boys. Ridiculous. So she forced young Peter to become a girl and call himself Angela. Yeah, you can see where this would be a tad controversial. When we're back on the beach, we see that Angela has killed poor Paul and is holding on to his decapitated head. That's when we get one of the most memorable shots in all of horror. God damn.
Somebody help them!
Could you imagine doing this segment and not revealing who the killer is? While the film does a good job of playing a whodunit, even clearly using Ricky in a shot to further trick the viewer, the final twist of Angela being the killer hits hard in so many ways. We watch throughout the movie as Angela is just so timid and shy, where it's hard to even imagine her even standing up for herself, let alone killing a bunch of people. So the fact that all of these heinous murders were perpetrated by such a seemingly sweet and innocent girl makes it that much more fucked up. Felissa Rose took on the part of Angela Baker and does a good enough job. Not much is really required of her other than being super quiet and awkward. But the real slam dunk with her performance is how much you just don't suspect her. I mean, she is just 13 years old here, so it's not exactly tough to look unintimidating, but then add to the fact that everything seems to be pointing at Ricky standing up for his cousin Angela, and Felissa's constantly timid performance, and all the signs seem to be pointing towards Ricky. Hell, it seems like a stiff breeze would completely topple Angela. But the reveal makes everything come together where the 180 works. Despite her very subtle performance, Felissa has made a whole career out of it, appearing at horror convention after horror convention. If you want to find out a little bit about the other Angela Baker portrayed by Pamela Springsteen, then check out our first ever Real Slashers on Sleepaway Camp 2. She'll always be my preferred version, but there's no denying the original.
She takes showers when no one can see. She has no hair down below. Judy, she's a real carpenter's dream. The light is a board and needs a screw. That's enough! Fuck off!
If you're a heterosexual male, you're going to be pretty let down by the contents here. Outside of a brief shower scene with Meg, in which you don't see anything, there's not a lot of exploitation going on here. However, if you're into man butts and even a little pecker action, then this has got plenty for you. In fact, all it needs is a little bedroom gyrating and it'd be about as gay as Nightmare Part 2.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Sleepaway Camp released on November 18th, 1983 in New York City and brought in... Well, apparently those numbers aren't available. Sleepaway Camp released on May 25th, 1984 in Los Angeles and brought in 90 grand? Wait, that can't be right, can it? Well then. Thankfully, despite its rough start, this has gained quite the cult status over the years due to its extremely controversial ending. It quickly became the talk of video stores everywhere. Did you see the ending of Sleepaway Camp? There have been 3 sequels in the meantime, or well, 4 if you count this half-ass sequel, mostly unfinished film. We've got Unhappy Campers, Teenage Wasteland, The Survivor, and Return to Sleepaway Camp. There was even a short film made in 2014 that followed Karen Field's Judy character. So they've gotten plenty of mileage out of this IP. There have even been reports of a reboot, as well as another sequel titled Sleepaway Camp Reunion. As to whether any of this actually comes to fruition is anyone's guess. I somehow don't think another Inheritance is coming Hiltzich's way. Like we've mentioned on this show time and time again, Scream Factory released the definitive version of this film on Blu-ray back in 2014. They really are just the kings of horror Blu-ray and DVD. The film is presented fully uncut with a cleaned up 2K scan of the original camera negative. It's easily the best the film has ever looked. Much better than the old VHS copy I saw as a kid. The movie has even been featured on Bad Movie Podcast after Bad Movie Podcast, with my favorite being an all-time classic episode of How Did This Get Made, where they come up with some truly baffling realizations.
The mother that we met, the creepy mom, that's Angela's cousin.
Nope.
Aunt.
Nope.
Aunt.
It's
Aunt.
Angela's,
I thought-
it's Angela's mother.
Just amazing. The movie's controversial nature has only expanded over the years, with the ending even being accused of being trans-misogynistic. Sure, they don't exactly treat Angela's trans status as anything but an absolute shock and awe moment, but look at the era it came out in. If anything, the film brings up some interesting questions. I'm sure that many people thought that this film would just be lost to time, and had it not been for its insane ending, this would likely be true. But as controversial as those final frames are, it's clearly the right creative decision, because it kept us talking about it to this day. Angela, the official Sleepaway documentary, is currently in production, so I'm sure we'll find out even more about the film before too long. What did you think of Sleepaway Camp's controversial ending? Do you think it would have left just as much of an impact without the twist? Sound off in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one. And shout out to Mom. Adore.
The 90s gets a bad rap as far as horror movies go. Without the 90s, we would have missed out on such films as Candyman, Scream, and the original It miniseries. I mean, let's be real, all of us of a certain generation hate clowns now because of that show. Thank you so much, Tim Curry. One thing that the 90s did have going for it was the re-emergence of the slasher boom. See, in the 80s, you couldn't walk into a video store without being overwhelmed with slasher movies. Everyone was trying to cash in on the goodwill that 1978's Halloween had given us. When Friday the 13th showed us that you could cash in on slashers in a big way, we ended up getting flooded with slasher content. Of course, for every My Bloody Valentine or The Prowler, we also had an Offerings or The Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. The 90s slasher glut was no different. When Scream hit big, another group of imitators sprung up as every studio wanted to cash in. Thus, you end up with some quality films like Urban Legend and I Know What You Did Last Summer, but sadly, as what happened in the 80s is the quality began to slip and the overabundance of slasher films began to get tired and boring. Even some sequels to the better ones see this fatigue, and as is the case with I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. So maybe it's time to revisit this sequel and see how it not only fails its predecessor, but also fails in any modern sense whatsoever. In I Know What You Did Last Summer, a group of teens are partying on 4th of July when they accidentally hit someone with their car, and instead of calling the police, it's decided to take the body and throw it in the ocean. A year goes by and everyone starts to receive notes saying, I know what you did last summer.
Oh boy, I usually only get this excited when they say the title of a movie in the movie.
They're soon picked off one by one until a final showdown between two of the teens, Julie and Ray, and what is revealed to be a fisherman in a slicker that uses a hook to kill his victims. The teens do get the best of him, but the only thing that can be found after he's thrown into the sea is a hand with a hook on it. It was inevitable that a sequel would quickly follow. When presented with the script for the second film, director Jim Gillespie decided not to return. He felt the story wasn't up to the original and frankly made no sense. So instead, director Danny Cannon would take over the directorial duties, and filming quickly went underway. And just a heads up here, the film will fully be spoiled in order to discuss what happens during the movie. Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. returned to play their characters Julie and Ray. A year after the events of the first film, we find Julie at college with her new roommate Carla. Ray has decided to continue working at the docks back home, but the two are still together. We find out Julie had been having nightmares about the fisherman, which explains the cliffhanger ending of the first film where he bursts out of the mirror to attack her. Carla wins a radio contest and is awarded 4 tickets to the Bahamas that following weekend. Kind of a quick turnaround, but okay. Julie wants Ray to go, but after a talk on the phone, he turns her down. Instead, Carla invites their friend Will and her boyfriend Tyrell. They get to the Bahamas only to find out that it's the off-season because it storms constantly. The fisherman shows up once again and begins to take out the hotel staff one by one until no one can help the group, and they are now stuck on the island. The killings continue until Julie has to finally have her showdown with the fisherman. It's revealed that their friend Will is actually the son of the fisherman from the first movie. They both work together to get them to this island to kill them, as Ben the fisherman used to work there. Whew, there is so much to unpack with this one. I remember seeing this one in theaters and being so disappointed. My hope was that with the rewatch for this video, it would improve. It did not. Let's run down some of the problems with the sequel. The idea to get the group to this island is needlessly convoluted. First, Ben enrolled his son in the same college as Julie, then Will had to integrate himself into her friend group, and after all that was settled, They called randomly to the girl's apartment claiming to be from a local radio station. They had to answer a question about the capital of Brazil, which, by the way, they got wrong and they realized it was a setup later. Okay, but now they have to hope that Ray won't go so that the group can invite Will and he can be the one with the other ticket. And once they're on the island, they have to hope that a bad storm will shut everything down so that no one can go to or come from the mainland. Then they gotta hope that no one else has shown up for the off-season raids at this specific island. That is a lot of stuff to have line up to get your revenge. They just as easily could have had Will say that he won a radio contest and tell everyone he's taking them on a trip. It takes out some of these ridiculous variables. And throughout all of this, Ben must have some deep pockets. Tuition for his son to attend class and then cover an all expenses paid trip for 4 to the Bahamas? I mean, that's not cheap. They know where Julie lives, so if they want revenge, couldn't they just show up to her apartment and kill her while she's asleep or something? And I know the argument then is that we wouldn't have a movie, but an idea with a lot less plot holes could have solved this idea. Some of these characters are also grown-worthy through a modern lens. Jack Black's dreadlock stoner guy is the absolute worst. His constant pushing of weed on people gets old really quick. We get it, you like weed. Even from the era that brought you Jay and Silent Bob and Dazed and Confused, this character is pushing it really far. His death is not a sad one, and it wasn't sad to see him go. And the horny back and forth between Carla and Tyrell starts out kind of funny, but when dead bodies start to pile up and he keeps complaining that he hasn't gotten any, I started to roll my eyes so much I was afraid they were gonna get stuck. And then Carla spends the entire film trying to get Julie to cheat on her boyfriend. While it seems that Ray and Julie are going through some rough waters, more on that in a minute, Carla is constantly telling Julie to hook up with Will, up until it's revealed that he's the villain. This makes her character really unlikable, and it doesn't make the audience root for her to survive. Although she may have had a point, Ray seems mischaracterized throughout the entire film. In the first film, he went through trauma just like Julie did. When Julie expresses that she's not ready to return home from college, Ray seems to take it as an insult. He's constantly trying to get her to return home with him over the 4th of July weekend. She instead is planning on staying at the school to study and take classes for summer school. Why does Ray suddenly not understand that for the past 2 years over 4th of July weekend, they've been the worst 2 years of her life? I mean, they hit a guy on the road and then dumped the body in the ocean to hide their crime. Then the following year, the guy they hit begins stalking her friend group and even kills 2 of them, one of which was her best friend. Come on, Ray. See, Ray doesn't seem to understand this at all and only sees her refusal to go back to her hometown as a slight against him. But all of this is in the first 15 minutes of the movie. We do learn that he's trying to set up a proposal and this trip to the Bahamas is throwing a wrench in his plan, and his friend convinces him to get over it and go on the trip, but they don't make it before the fisherman kills his friend, so RIP John Hawkes. Now this puts Ray outside of the main story for most of the film, which is not a great storyline for his character. Instead, he spends the majority of the film trying to reach the island that the group is on. Not a great use of the main character's boyfriend and one of the survivors of the last film. Having Will be Ben's son also seems like it's copying completely from the reveal of Scream 2 the year before it.
Ben's son!
A family member coming back for revenge for what happened to the killer's family member in the first film? Come on, that's a mistake that is still being used. I'm looking at you, Scream 6. His dismissal by having him hold a character while his father winds up his hook hand only to have the character step aside and Will take the hook in the chest. It's like straight out of professional wrestling and works just about as well as it does there. With all of that being said, how about some positives? After Ben loses his real hand in the last film, he gives himself an upgrade in this film by getting a hook for a hand. He also puts it to good use by dispatching a lot of the movie's characters with it. Olga the maid seems to get it the worst after she's hooked to death death and then her body is dragged into an adjacent room. Some of the side characters that aren't annoying is Nancy the bartender. She seems like she's over these annoying teens staying at the hotel, but quickly becomes a fun character that even holds her own for a few scenes before she's ultimately dispatched, Friday the 13th Part 2 style, after Estes the voodoo guy, another annoying stereotype, is stabbed with a harpoon and falls on top of her. Ben then shows up to push the harpoon home through Nancy's midsection. Oof. Then horror legend Jeffrey Combs shows up as the hotel manager, Mr. Brooks. No one plays an annoyed character like Combs. He's pretty much built a majority of his career with his annoyed looks and exasperated demeanor. And you know what? No one does it better. Overall, the film just doesn't work as a sequel. The characters don't seem to match up with how we left them in the last film, and the new characters don't seem to add anything worthwhile to the plot. This one only draws 3 out of 10 for us. It's a sloppy follow-up to what was a pretty good slasher. The original was a fun mystery, while this one tries to add in some backstory to the character of the fisherman that just drains any mystery out of him. The misfire of a sequel that killed any momentum for the franchise. A direct-to-video sequel was released, but none of the surviving characters would return. In recent years, an Amazon series based on the same book would be made. It doesn't feature the fisherman as the villain and wouldn't ultimately capture an audience. And there have been rumblings of doing a new sequel with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. interested in reprising their original roles. And with Scream once again being a hot property, maybe it's time the fisherman brought back his hook and slashed his way back onto the big screen. From JoBlo Horror, keep an eye on the road and hold on to your secrets.
Remakes rarely improve the original, and since we almost never remake subpar films, the comparison to the, let's be honest, classic original will always be baked into the cake. It's almost nigh impossible, but here I am, coming to tell you, among the small list of remakes that outdo their predecessors, this is one of them. The Hills Have Eyes is one of the most intense, cynical tales of survival that respects Wes Craven's vision, yet expands in the right places and outdoes it in scope and execution. The 06 remake touches the third rail of horror more than anyone would have the balls to do today, and is almost an unintentional time capsule of society at the time. Listen, I love eras. I love the defining qualities of time and place. This microcosm of its time was probably the best for horror since the 1980s. I know. Since there isn't a ton of talk about it, and since I feel it's deserving of classic status, today I want to explore the new French extremity, interpretation of the American Southwest, and the evil within. So let's talk The Hills Have Eyes.
Nice hearing from you, Carlos.
Craven's 1977 movie came after his big breakout success with The Last House on the Left, and it works within its shoestring budget. The grimy and raw feel was not a character itself, but a byproduct of circumstance. And maybe that's why Wes decided to pick up Hills for the remake treatment. Of course, remakes had picked up steam, so I'm sure that was a factor. But after seeing High Tension and its bleak, grounded style, Wes knew he had found his people. Even saying, Wes was wise enough to realize the remake train had momentum and best be involved. Though, let's be honest here, by 2010 it doesn't look like he had much say. Directed by Alexandre Aja and written by Aja and writer Gregory Levasseur, and that's honestly the best you're gonna get out of me for pronunciation, guys. I'm trying. Hills Have Eyes tells a story of a family driving across the New Mexico desert on their way to San Diego, accidentally finding themselves in the territory of mutant cannibals, whom they must fight to survive. Cast-wise, we got a meek son-in-law by the name of Doug, Aaron Stanford, daughter Brenda, the great Emily DeRaven, son Bobby, Dan Bird, eldest daughter Lynn, Vanessa Shaw, Lynn's baby, the matriarch Ethel, rock star that is Kathleen Quinlan, and the manliest of men, Big Bob, Sir Ted Levine. Not knighted, of course, but sure as shit should be. In terms of a general story, this doesn't stray very far from the original. Yet, what does it take for a remake to succeed on its own? Well, 3 things. 1. Respect the original. 2. Innovative interpretation. And 3. Strong direction with a talented cast. I'm of the mindset that when tackling previous material, it's best to go as far into left field as you can. Be unique, be your own, because the original will win almost every time. Yet here, Aja and Levasseur take the risky approach by keeping it very close to the 1977 version. But by inviting comparison, you're backing yourself into a corner. But this is where Aja shines. The 06 version doesn't shy away from some of the harder stuff in the original. Still kill a dog, Brenda's and as a bigger budget film, I'm glad this didn't water down the intensity that came from the 1977 version, but brought it into the new millennium with guts. Literally. The biggest change, story-wise, is the cannibals themselves. Aja and company were wise to update the reasonings and their origin. Instead of inbred desert hillbillies, we have these deformed mutants. Folks affected by the bomb testing, and they, like Godzilla, are the side effects we left behind, that have come back to bite society in the ass. It makes the villains that much more frightening. It makes a tough situation near impossible. The Hills Have Eyes works so well because it's taking a European feel, that being the nihilistic new French extremity from Aja, and having him, and of course Levasseur, filter and interpret it through the American Southwest. From Doug's feeble, almost satire-esque approach to guns and violence.
Leave Doug alone. He's a Democrat. He doesn't believe in guns.
To Big Bob being King Alpha, taking off his hat to pray. It's American, very much so, but ever so slightly exaggerated. Upping the violence, much of which I can't show on YouTube, and giving it that unrelenting drive. Aja brings that French taboo-breaking punkness stateside. Everything becomes more stressful once the vehicle breaks down, and it goes from bad to worse to f***ed. Not to mention, Aja actually repeated a couple of his high-tension shots here. The sexual nature is very European, while the gore is grounded in brutal, sadistic realism. The mid-90s on started to soften on gore and violence. From Columbine to 9/11, we as a country were not really in the mood for a reality check. Yet, we went from Spider-Man flipping off of the American flag to Amanda digging out a key from a very alive cellmate real fast. While the French were going through their exploitation phase, we as a world came together and said,
fuck it.
I saw this in theaters, dude. I was there watching Lynn trying to save her child only to have her brains paint the wall. They kill a dog, Brenda gets and Lizard points a Taurus Model 66 in a baby's face. Again, nobody here is having a good time.
Alright, we're having a good time.
The shutter speed changes, the ramp effects, the graphic gore. We as a country were angry and our horror represented that. Of course, you need a cast to handle it without fumbling. Emily DeRavin has the emotional intensity for Brenda, plus her revenge kill was absolutely needed and welcomed. Kathleen Quinlan, legend, and gives one of the better death scenes in horror. This one I felt. Something about her needing to know everyone was safe and asking for the blanket as a, last sign of comfort.
You need anything?
Ted Levine could read the casting list and I'd be enthralled. While Aaron Stanford really goes the distance as Doug. Character-wise, if you didn't go in with the knowledge of the original movie, you would never think he'd end up as a lead. He waits until the last minute to finally defend himself. Yet his arc is complete when he gets that sweet taste of revenge. And rightfully so, they killed his wife, took his kid. I cheered in theaters, I cheered at home when he finally took charge. And is there nothing more American than when Doug uses the flag as a weapon? I damn near put my hand over my heart. Ridiculous? Yes. And brimming with hope. It's amazing. Oh, and real quick, Tom and Andy deliver a great score here. When things get messy, they do this pulsating sound with fuzz, which is both sonically pleasant, yet deeply uncomfortable. Then, for example, when Doug finally mans up, we get this big bombastic score signifying our hero's journey. One that involves shooting and stabbing your problems away. Any movie where the dog becomes a part of the action is okay by me, and I'm glad that Aja included that from the original. An intense and visceral ride, The Hills Have Eyes is a product of a different era. As much as I'd like to believe the moniker of Masters of Horror will continue on with different directors, I believe it'll more than likely become synonymous with the golden age of the genre. And that's fine. With West leaving us almost a decade ago, time waits for no one and reminds us, though creatives leave,
Not leaving, no. Moving on.
their work will stay with us forever. If it wasn't for Wes Craven, we wouldn't have Aja's interpretation. And so I bring it back to the master himself and all that he's done. I'm glad that in Wes's time, he got to see a proper remake of a film deeply personal to him. And for that, I say thank you, Aja, and Godspeed, Wes, wherever you are.